Hi, welcome to Classical Stuff You Should Know, a podcast about classical education, classical world, classical books, classical food, classical art, classical dress.
Food? Have we done food?
No.
Okay.
It's like dates and olive oil.
And that sounds disgusting together.
It's actually really easy. It's just those two things.
Dates
Wow,
and olive
that's all they
That's
could
it.
eat? Yeah.
Hummus.
And mutton.
maybe.
Yeah. What?
And mead.
Yes.
Mead?
Oh,
Yeah.
now we're talking.
Mutton and olive oil.
Isn't
That
mead
sounds delicious.
Isn't mead just like fermented honey water?
It's like beer, but instead of being fermented from hops, it's fermented from honey, and it's disgusting.
Oh, well.
I think it's disgusting.
Mead's gross?
It's
Oh.
so sweet. Like, it's honey. I mean,
Sounds good.
maybe I just had really sweet mead.
Is it? What,
there
Sweet
different
versus
kinds?
dry, just like wines, right? So there's sweet wines and there's dry wines. I bet there's
there's dry mead.
dry mead.
Oh, interesting. Anyway,
One I have is gross. I don't recommend.
we are three classical educators, and we like casting pods. My name is Graham Donaldson, and I am joined with AJ Hannenberg
That's me.
and Thomas Magby.
Hello.
And thanks for listening.
Okay, bye.
No.
And that's it for us for
Good
today.
episode.
And I think so. We've been doing series on a bunch of things, and we're now, I think, book 5 into Plato. AJ has been teaching us Plato, and let's keep on trucking.
You, say,
What a thrilling intro.
you sound so excited.
Well, I asked you at the beginning before. I was like, "Hey, man, I'm doing your intro. Can you tell me like one thing that book 5 is
Oh,
about?"
that's what you wanted to know.
And you're
I
like,
you
No.
started saying
No.
like,
no spoilers.
I thought you were just all you did. I thought all you did was like, hey, the cave's in book 5, right? And I was like, no. And you're like, oh, what? And then you lost your mind. I didn't know you were asking for the intro.
So I'm gonna make stuff up. So Plato book 5 is when they take a break to have some food.
Okay, great.
And
It's good. What else did they
actually,
do?
people must be liking
Oh my gosh.
Plato's Republic because someone left a picture on my desk,
Mm-hmm.
and it is a little jaunty man in a hat in a city with a map, and it says Plato's Republic looking for justice in the city. And it's this really nice little hand-drawn picture.
Do you
so
know-
thanks, student, whoever did that.
Do you know, you don't know who did that? Oh, wow. That's cool.
So I hope it was like Ellen Schuknecht.
Yeah,
She's an administrator at our school, and she is not a student. So
the elder statesman of the school.
Yeah,
But
she
I
is.
hung it up on my wall in my class.
I've the only people that have talked to me are people that are asking me to keep doing it.
Oh, there you go.
So
It's great.
If you want me to stop, you have to tell me to stop.
No one
'cause I've
wants
got
you to stop.
voices on the other
People
side.
have been asking us to continue doing Canterbury Tales too, but
Yeah.
Oh, that's
about
true.
that.
So.
But they are a little more racy than
Yeah,
Than the
man.
Republic.
I
I guess
wanna-
this section of the Republic, isn't it kind of weird?
this one.
Yeah.
I think it's so fun.
I want to get like classical stuff on iTunes. It says like classical stuff, episode 115, The Miller's Tale, rated
Explicit.
E for explicit, and be like, yeah, or with a big E next to
What
it.
we can do is do like classical stuff after dark.
Hate that. Oh,
We're going to be talking about the city of Pompeii. All right, go for it.
For those of you who don't know what
Nope.
he's referencing.
Google it.
yeah. Don't Google
Not
it.
at
What-
work.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah, okay, that's it. All right, good. That's all needs to be said about that. All right, so book 5. Do you boys remember what has happened thus far? Books 1 through 4.
We built a city on rock and roll.
Why did we build that city on rock
find
and roll?
justice.
To find justice. So
We found
the
it.
question is justice really a good thing? And while we're at it,
What?
What is justice?
Yeah.
What's
Yep.
the whole thing?
Yep.
And what did we finally decide that justice was? Well, the way that they got about it was they built a city.
Mm-hmm.
And they said if we can find out what justice is in a city, and by the way, while we're at it, let's just build the perfect city.
Right, sure.
Then maybe we can see what it is in a person.
Yep. I
Right.
seem to remember justice at this stage being do your job.
Yep.
Yeah, just do your thing and don't stick your nose in anybody else's business, and
Yeah.
sort of keep to yourself and do your thing.
If you're a guardian, we're going to need you when we need violence. If you're a brain, what are they called?
The rulers?
Guardian,
If you're-
also guardians.
If you're a guardian,
Just
but,
two
the,
different
but the
sections.
top guardian, we're going to need you to like, I don't know, tell us what the best marginal tax rate is. And if you're a artisan, like just don't be too rich, don't be too poor, and just make some pots.
Do good job.
Do your job.
Yeah.
And so there's harmony. Would you say that keeping your nose out of everybody else's business it makes for harmony between the different parts of the city?
Yeah.
I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of what it turns out to be in the person. Do you remember the 4 virtues from last time?
Oh gosh. Wisdom, justice, courage, temperance.
Wisdom, justice, courage, temperance. Wisdom being the virtue of reason or the rulers of the city.
Yep.
Justice being
Doing your job. The people Wasn't that
Isn't
It's
justice
wisdom, courage, temperance.
Courage is the virtue
Guardian.
of the guardians.
Courage is the virtue of the guardians.
Temperance is the virtue of the artisans.
No, it's when
Harmony
it's
in the
harmony
city.
between the three. Remember?
harmony in the city?
Yeah,
Harmony in the city. Everyone has an agreement about what should be done and when and how much.
and then justice is
Do your job.
Keeping everything. It's when everything is doing its job rather than something else. So when
And in the right order,
reason
right?
is
Yeah.
in charge and not the appetites.
Gotcha.
Right. So we ended up talking about the tripartite soul, which was 3 different pieces. We talked about wanting to look at a dead guy, and
That was a thing. Yeah.
yep, it's a thing. So if you are interested in any of that, go back and listen to the first 4 episodes.
So this is a very aristocratic style thing. Like we don't want the people in charge.
What do
yeah,
call
we
it?
want the best of us
A
in
city
charge.
a city probably couldn't run if every single person was in. I mean, I guess you'd have a literally democratic government with
Democracy, right.
nobody having a seat of power.
That's like what our students want when it
Yeah,
comes
anarchy.
to rules and stuff.
I guess.
yeah.
They
They-
say that they want that. The more you talk to them, I think they recognize the need for some type of a rule. Mm-hmm. Don't you all do that on your first days of class of like setting
Henry
rules?
does.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think they recognize the need for order.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So we've done that. We've found justice. We finished a city. Is there anything else you guys are curious about with the city? Did I mention anything sort of offhand that you were like, that's kind of weird?
You did at the end, and I forgot what it was.
We needed to not want money so that we wouldn't be attacked,
Okay.
which makes a lot
So
of
let's
sense.
be poor
Let's
so
be poor.
we don't have to be attacked.
And but the other thing was like, how do you multiply to another city? Like when do you?
Didn't you say there were 4 problems that we were going to talk about this time?
I thought so,
Oh.
but apparently that's not addressed. It seems like an interlude, right? He
Okay.
says that there are different kinds of vice, and then Book 5 apparently doesn't address any of them.
Okay.
But what he does address is one of the guys that is hanging out with Socrates. Socrates is the main character in Plato's Republic. Says, "Whoa, whoa, whoa! You seem to mention offhand that we have women and children in common.
Oh yeah.
What is the deal with that?" Because he just sort of passes over it. He's like, "Of course, wives and children will be common to everyone," and moving on. And they don't really talk about it. And so
It's weird.
the question posed is, he says, "Please, therefore, to say what sort of community you mean. We have been long expecting that you would tell us something about the family life of your citizens, how they will bring children into the world and rear them when they have arrived, and in general, what is the nature of this community of women and children. For we are of opinion that the right or wrong management of such matters will have a great and paramount influence on the state for good or evil." So basically, you can't just say that offhand and expect us to accept it like that, because we will think you are being lazy. It actually
Right.
says that. Why we think you're lazy. You're not telling us everything. And Socrates kind of says, I kind of saw that was some trouble, and I was just hoping to get away with not talking about it. And they're like, but we caught you, so you have to. And then he says, okay,
Makes
well,
sense.
we'll talk about it. Let's talk about whether it's beneficial first. If it's beneficial, and then we can talk about whether it's possible, right? And so one of the things he says is, okay, let us think about dogs. Want to talk about dogs?
No.
Well, Socrates. Oh yeah, he had a rough marriage, if I remember correctly.
Okay. Sorry. So let's talk about dogs. When
Okay.
you have a set of dogs, right? Say you run a farm, right? And you need some dogs.
Yeah,
You
definitely.
got a sheep farm. You're
Yeah.
going to need some sheepdogs, right? So how do you go about cultivating a good set of sheepdogs?
You have older dogs, and then you bring in puppies, and then the older dogs teach younger dogs what to do.
Sure.
Yep.
Okay. What about like over several generations of dogs?
You gotta breed
find
'em.
your best ones, yeah, and then make sure they breed.
Okay. Find your best ones. Make sure they breed.
Yep.
Great. Now, do you only take the boy dogs?
No.
And leave all the girl dogs at home because they can make puppies, which means they should absolutely stay at home.
What? Don't you need both? You need both boy and girl dogs to be good sheepdog.
Yeah, I mean, if you have a good sheepdog that's a girl, you're going to make her run sheep
Yeah,
around.
totally.
You're not just going to make her sit at home just because she happens to be able to make puppies.
Sure.
Right, so he says, clearly, that's the same thing with our women. Our women are to have the same duties as the men.
Oh.
Right, so he actually says, in our state, women can be guardians, and women are not barred from holding the the high positions of guardians. Like, just because they're women and can bear children doesn't mean that you're going to leave them at home.
Sure.
And so he says they should have the same nurture and education.
This seems like a radical notion for him writing in this day and time. Am I wrong?
No,
Okay.
I mean, well, I actually don't know much about how
Right.
they treated women in the Hellenistic period,
Yeah.
but I can't imagine that everyone held this same notion.
Yeah.
And he will reveal a little bit of historical bias as he moves through this chapter.
Okay.
But
But at this point,
It seems,
very egalitarian.
seems pretty egalitarian,
Sure.
which is another reason I kind of bristle when everyone just blankly says that every old society said that women were worthless. And he says that women can hold the highest position in the place and should have the exact same education as men.
Awesome.
And so he says, if we bring in women to our education, do you remember how we educate? What's involved in the education?
Wrestling.
Wrestling in the gym.
We're
And
talking about this for the
tunes.
Guardians. Is that what it was? The music? Yeah.
Music and tunes and wrestling is
Okay.
kind of a piece of it. He says, well, if we admit women to our wrestling parties, do you seem to remember anything about the Greek gymnasium?
Nude.
Yeah, they had a very
naked.
loose dress policy.
Thank you.
Yeah, they did not clothe themselves.
Okay,
And he said, if we carry them out, they might appear ridiculous. And his buddies say, well, that's absolutely. And he says, well, the most ridiculous thing of all will be the sight of women naked in the palaestra, exercising with the men, especially when they're no longer young. They certainly will not be a vision of beauty, any more than the enthusiastic old men who, in spite of wrinkles and ugliness, continue to frequent the gymnasia.
Gross. Weird.
And he says, people gonna be talking about this. They're
Yep.
gonna and of our women doing all the things that men do, right? Riding on horseback and getting all this education, and people are gonna talk. And he says, but that's just revealing their own idiocy, because they're not realizing what's good should never be ridiculed, right? The good is the beautiful, and that which brings hurt to the state can only be terrible. And so what they're doing is making fun of a good thing, right? Having women
Interesting. Yeah.
who are talented be awesome,
Yeah.
right?
Just get some Under Armour and problem solved.
Problem solved. Good. Wonderful.
Yoga pants. That
Yeah,
solves all problems.
there you go.
Yep. And so then he poses the next question. So that's what he says. He says, women are to have the same jobs and the same education. Now, do you think that everyone sort of reacted great to this?
No.
Yeah, probably not. Do you seem to remember what we said about what vocation everyone should have? We said that it should be tuned to their nature.
Yeah.
Right? That was in early books, like
right.
book 2.
Yeah.
Right? So everyone in our state should have a job that is suited to their nature, right? If
Yes.
they like to bang on stuff, well, you can make that guy a
Blacksmith.
blacksmith,
Yeah.
right? If they like to, hammer a piece of leather into a piece of other leather, then make that guy a cobbler, right?
Yeah,
Give him
sure.
something
Yeah.
to do.
Good.
He likes to smack some dough around, make him a baker, right? All
There's a lot of
these
violence
things.
in the city of yours. Okay. All the hitting and hammering and anyway. Okay.
Name one thing that doesn't involve some sort of violence. Even writing, I'm stabbing something with something sharp.
Good. Wonderful.
Yeah.
I was going to say art, but
Prove me wrong.
Can't do it. Nope. Impossible.
Okay.
It must be so, AJ.
So the question posed against Socrates says, look, if we said that we are supposed to suit everything to someone's nature, and women have natures that are so different from the nature of men, how can they be having the same jobs?
Who says this?
Just the young folks around. They're trying to catch Socrates in
In a trap.
sophistry. Yeah, in a trap. He says, you said everyone was supposed to have a job that was suited to their nature. And you also adhere to the notion that women and men are different. So how can they be having the same jobs if they have such different natures?
But men can be guardians and men can be potters, but they're still men. So they have the same nature, but different natures, but different jobs. So surely women could also be in that same category.
Okay, that's kind of what he says. He says we are in danger of getting into a verbal argument, which, do you guys know what a verbal argument is?
That's what Socrates says?
Yeah.
It's just is it quibbling over definition?
Yeah, usually it
Really?
means that we've got some sort of weird definition thing happening. That's what a verbal argument is.
Isn't that what he's been doing this entire time?
Arguing verbally, or
Yes, that's what I mean. Sorry, I was like, unless he's been like interpretive dancing this whole time. I
this
didn't-
confuses my students every year on
Yeah.
their logic tests.
Yeah.
I ask, what's a verbal argument? And that's clearly where you yell at one another.
right, exactly.
But it's not that. It's
Okay.
when you're having a disagreement because someone is confused about the definition of a word.
Interesting.
Right? Or because there's something going on language-wise when really everyone kind of agrees.
Yep.
And so he says, suppose that by way of illustration, we were to ask the question whether there is not an opposition in nature between bald men and hairy men. And if this is admitted by us, then if bald men are cobblers, we should forbid the hairy men to be cobblers. And conversely, they all say, this would be a jest. He says, yes, I said, it is a jest. And why?
Got 'em.
Because we never meant when we constructed the state that the opposition of natures should extend to every difference, but only to those differences which affected the pursuit in which the individual is engaged. We should have argued, for example, that a physician and one who is in mind a physician may be said to have the same nature, whereas the physician and carpenter have different natures, right? So he says, if the difference consists only in women bearing and men begetting children, this does not amount to a proof that a woman differs from a man in respect of the sort of education she should receive. Just as you guys wouldn't leave your female dogs in the barn simply because, they can have puppies, means they can't herd sheep.
Yep.
Right?
It makes sense. I'm curious what the response he gets back is, because this seems like obvious that he would make this argument, but 2,500 years ago, maybe this would be a much more controversial argument to make, right?
Yeah, it makes sense to me, right? You want the people that are best suited for the job,
right?
And I think the question wouldn't be one of can they bear or children or not, as far as sheepdogs are concerned, but are they good at herding sheep?
Right.
And if the male dog is not good at herding sheep, you put him to some other task, sitting on your wife's feet to keep him warm, right?
Sure,
they're doing something else.
Yeah,
and so he says if they are gifted, they should be doing the thing that they are gifted to do, right? That's the kind of nature I'm talking about, not the difference between men and women. Here's the section where everything gets a little bit historically screwy for some reason. I'm gonna read it to you guys, and then you can kind of weigh in on the subject. Because, a good chunk of this book is talking about women and children and this whole thing. So having a right view of women is kind of important.
And we eventually come back. So he embarks on this because he said that children should be had in common, and that there's no
women
marriage.
And children should be had in common.
So there's no marriage in this perfect society.
Marriage, I think, loosely defined.
Okay, but does he end up there eventually? He makes all
yes,
these okay.
He gets there. Right now we're seeing if it's beneficial to the state.
Got it.
And part of that is women having the same education and being in the same jobs.
Okay, cool.
So he says, we'll ask you a question. When you spoke of a nature gifted or not gifted in any respect, did you mean to say that one man will acquire a thing easily, another with difficulty? A little learning will lead one to discover a great deal, whereas the other, after much study and application, no sooner learns than he forgets? Or again, did you mean that the one has a body which is a good servant to his mind, while the body of the other is a hindrance? Would not these be the sort of differences which distinguish the man gifted by nature from the one who is ungifted? And then the response is, no one will deny that. And can you mention any pursuit of mankind in which the male sex has not all these gifts and qualities in a higher degree than the female? Need I waste time in speaking of the art of weaving and the management of pancakes and preserves, in which womankind does really appear to be great?
What?
And which,
oh my word.
And in which for her to be beaten by a man is of all things the most absurd. What? And they say, you are quite right, he replied, in maintaining the general inferiority of the female sex. Although many women are in many things superior to many men, yet on the whole, what you say is true. And then he says, and if so, my friend, I said there is no special faculty of administration in a state which a woman has because she is a woman, or which a man has by virtue of his sex, but the gifts of nature are alike diffused in both. All the pursuits of men are the pursuits of women also. But in all of them, a woman is inferior to a man. And the response is, very true. So do you guys see why this is a weird section?
Yeah, so he's saying, you can definitely be the head of the state.
Sure.
It's just the reason we don't have any women at the head of the states is because none of them were up to the task.
I don't think he's saying that. I think he's saying, in general, men are more gifted, but there are several places where women might surpass a man, not
pancakes and canning.
Making, yeah.
But it's not only that. He says there are times when your random woman will be better than your random man. But on the whole, if we take an average over all men and all women, then men will be generally better at stuff than women, except pancakes.
Except
and canning.
pancakes. Yeah, sure. Right. So problematic is what you're getting at. So it's interesting that he holds both of those in. And maybe not tension to say both. Like, he's open to there being a female guardian who's head of the city, but also doesn't expect there to be as many as there are men. Right? Isn't that basically what he's saying?
Yeah, I think he's just anticipating that we will more often have men that are suited to these roles than we will have women that are suited to the highest roles.
Yep.
But there will be cases where a woman is better suited and she'll do her thing. But in general, there might be a man that's available that is more gifted in X, Y, or Z.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's weird. I mean, or maybe it does not surprise me to hear that. That's I expected him to get that pushback as he said, women could be head of the city as well, I expected him to get that kind of pushback from the people he's talking with. It is kind of surprising that Socrates says both of those things. That seems kind of weird.
Yeah, even says men and women alike possess the qualities which make a guardian. They differ only in their comparative strength or weakness. So it's weird that he has this like they really aren't different only in like bodily strength, but also women are worse than men. Like it's this
Yeah.
this
So he's
weird
saying,
duality.
he's not saying that we're barring women from doing something because they're women. It's that they won't be doing these things because on average they're worse at it than men.
Say that again.
He says we're not barring them because they're women, but they will be naturally barred from doing the thing because
If they're
almost
worse.
every time there will be a man who is better at it.
No, I don't think he's even saying we'll naturally bar them. I think the rest of this chapter would say that he anticipates having many women in these roles.
But then why does he make the statement about women being worse than men or inferior, whatever his word is?
I'm not entirely sure. It is with it. If you noticed, he sort of, it was a little extra narration, and he's talking, I think, about the kind of fellow who doesn't like this and kind of laughs at women having the same education. And he's like, this is what we would say to that guy. And he would kind of say this, except, all the pursuits of men are the pursuits of women also, but in all of them, a woman is inferior to a man. It's just this weird section. I don't know.
Does he move past this? Does he continue with the same line of thought about the superiority or inferiority?
That's it. That's
Okay.
the section that talks about the superiority or inferiority of men or women. After this, it just seems pretty egalitarian.
Good.
Everything is the same. There is no like we bar women from the highest roles. It's all share and share alike, right?
Sure.
And it says, and those women who have such qualities are to be selected as the companions and colleagues of men who have similar qualities and whom they resemble in capacity and character, right? Same nature should have the same pursuits.
Yeah.
Right? There's nothing unnatural in assigning music and gymnastics to the wives of guardians. To that point, we've come around. And he basically says, this law is agreeable to nature and is not an impossibility or mere aspiration. Basically, it's totally doable. And so he tries to show that it's good, and then he tries to show that it's also doable, right?
Yep.
Guardians are the best of the citizens. Their wives will be the best women. And is there anything better than having the best of the best run our state? That's kind of what he says.
Sure.
So clearly it's beneficial. Obviously it's possible.
Right.
And there we go.
Yep.
Right. That's how we have it. So do you guys have any thoughts after this little section?
I guess it's just unclear, but what he means by like, why even have that section about
Right.
inferiority
Yes.
if the conclusion is essentially meritocracy?
Right. Or does he have to make those statements? Like, is it such a radical thing for him to say it should be based only on skill that he almost has to put that in there to say, but I'm still a Greek, or you know what I mean?
You think he's
Like,
kind of just like hedging his bets and making it more acceptable to the
could be.
populace?
It could be. Maybe not if the people are not reacting strong. If the people he's talking with aren't reacting strongly in that. Again, I don't know enough about.
I don't know. Socrates doesn't seem like he cares too much about what people think.
Right.
Yeah.
So why would he care about what people think on this issue
Sure.
and not on any other one?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't really know.
So that's the next little bit is about, okay, you've said that we have all these women in these roles and they get the same education, but you also mentioned that we would have them all in common, right? And he's like, well,
Man, get over it, Glaucon. Come on, buddy.
That's weird. That's weird.
That's kind of what he says. I do not think I said that there can be any dispute about the very great utility of having wives and children in common. The possibility is quite another matter and will be very much disputed. He's like,
What?
I think it's pretty easy to prove that this is great, you guys. The question is, can we do it? And they respond, they say, I think a good many doubts will be raised about both. And he said, you imply that the two questions must be combined. Now, I meant that you should admit the utility, and in this way, as I thought I would escape from one of them, and then there would remain only the possibility. But
and they're
that-
like, no, dude. They're like, Socrates, have you ever been in love? Come on, man.
They literally say, but that little attempt is detected, and therefore you will please give a defense of both. So, no, you try to go sneaking around, getting out of any of this business.
You dog.
Yeah.
Right.
So the question is this possible, right? I think he decides to address the possibility first and the benefit first, possibility second. So he's going to say, here's why it's good to have women and children, and then can we do this?
No. In common.
Right. Thank you. Yes, that is the important distinction.
Yeah. So he says, here's maybe the benefit. Here's what we'll do. We'll put the ladies and the dudes together, right? They're going to have the same education. They're all going to be guardians, and we'll just sort of like let them hang out. And then nature will take its course. You know what I mean? Meaning, I think that they'll fall in love. The quote is, and so they will be drawn by a necessity of their natures to have intercourse with each other. Necessity is not too strong a word, I think. And the guy says, yes, necessity. Not geometrical, but any another sort of necessity which lovers know.
Not geometrical.
Yeah, good.
We're not talking math, boys, but they'll want to get together.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. And then he says, but this must proceed in an orderly fashion, because in a city this blessed, licentiousness is not a thing that we are down with. So what he says is, how can marriages be made most beneficial? Right? We're gonna make marriages sacred in the highest degree.
Most beneficial to the state.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's why I got
That's my question. Our goal is to make this state awesome. Mm-hmm. How can we go about putting ladies and dudes together in a way that best helps our state?
By trying to figure out what kinds of kids they're going to have by mixing together.
So determining who marries who. So having input into who marries.
Yeah, like arranged marriages.
Remember the dogs, gentlemen. You're going to breed, right? You are going to figure out which are the best. Yeah. And just like if you were breeding dogs for hunting or birds for whatever, or falconry.
So get the guardian ladies and the guardian men. And
guardian ladies and guardian dudes. And we want the best of the best together, right? The same principle involved in breeding dogs is involved in breeding humans.
Yeah, this
right?
is
as far as our state goes.
Yeah,
Wait,
sure.
you hate this? How come you hate this?
Everything about this.
This is what happens when like logicians are in charge of society.
Yeah, things go really well. What are you talking about? I don't understand your question. Yeah. Also, what we are not acknowledging are the men and women who are not the best. What happens to them? I'm assuming we do not want them to have children.
We addressed that at some point.
Wonderful, and I'm sure it's horrendous. So that's not great. I don't know if all of this sounds like eugenics, right? It
certainly is.
Which I recently found out the word eugenics literally means good. It's either good breeding or good birth, some version of that. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what he's proposing. So that's why I don't like that. I think somewhat reasonably.
Yep.
Okay, thanks.
So this is a fun little section.
Great.
I replied that our rulers will find a considerable dose of falsehood and deceit necessary for the good of their subjects. We were saying that the use of all these things regarded as medicines might be of advantage. He says, sure. And the lawful use of them seems likely to be often needed in the regulations of marriages and births. Basically, those of the best sex should be united as often as possible, and the inferior with the inferior as seldom as possible.
Right.
And we want some sort of union, but we can't just tell them like, sorry, bro, you super uggo, so we're not going to breed you today.
What's the Greek for uggo, please?
Uggo, agos, agon.
Good, thank you.
I think that's Latin. Isn't that Latin?
Yes,
uggo, agos, agon.
Yes, thank you.
So yeah, you can't just come out and tell them like, hey, you're a stallion, you get the best of the breeding, and sorry, man, you're not going to have kids very often. Rough for you, man. Yeah. So they're going to have to do it by deceit. Mm. And one of the things they do is they arrange a festival at which they will bring together the brides and the bridegrooms and make sacrifices. And the aim will be to preserve the average population. So don't get too big or too small. And you have to consider wars and diseases and all kinds of stuff. So you figure out how many breedings you need to have. And then he says, we shall have to invent some ingenious kind of lots, which the less worthy may draw on each occasion of our bringing them together, and then they will accuse their own ill luck, and not the rulers.
I don't like
so
this.
We'll set it up so that the uggos, we all draw from a bowl to try to have kids that day, right? Because this is like the marriage festival. It's where I think it's kind of he kind of dances around in the language.
So it's the algorithm. The algorithm is
exactly.
Yeah, but I mean, it's clear that all women are in common, and they're not really having marriages, right? And so I think by a marriage festival, he means a sexy times festival.
Okay.
So they all, because licentiousness isn't allowed. So we draw them together, let them fall in love a little bit, and then have this like sexy times festival where everyone draws lots. And the uggos don't get to breed that day, and the pretty ones all do.
And we're just depending on the uggos never realizing,
like curses,
20th year in a row or whatever.
Snake eyes again.
Yeah,
I can't believe it.
You think catch on at some point.
What do you guys think of this setup?
I mean, we've already lied to our guardians about gold being in their blood, so go for it. It's crazy. It's crazy.
Yep.
Those they're gonna like form a like angry subreddit. Those uggos.
Thank you. Good.
Called, like,
Yeah.
you know, R Snake Eyes or something.
Ill luck. Yeah.
R slash
snake.
bad lots. Yeah. Good.
And someone's gonna be like, I think it's rigged, and be like, no man,
No
that's
way,
a
man.
conspiracy theory.
Wait,
How
that's
come
actually
we're
true.
all of us are bad at math?
Yeah. Good.
He even says, I think our braver and better youth, besides their honors and other rewards, might have greater facilities of intercourse with women given them. Their bravery will be a reason, and such fathers ought to have as many sons as possible. And the other guys are like, true. So this is kind of how it happens. But they take the kids, and they don't leave them with the mothers and fathers, right? They're going to take the kids and they deposit them with wet nurses, right? And you bring in the moms a little bit to help breed the kids, but you wean them off their mother as quick as possible, and the care is given to wet nurses so that the guardian women, the women who are running the state, don't have to lose nights of sleep. They don't have to be concerned with all of this. And then you like do the Cupid shuffle with the kids, and nobody really knows whose kids they are, right? So.
Sure.
Everyone kind of suckles each other's kids. You like have your child, it's whisked away, and then
there's
it's
no-
left to grow outside of your.
There's no conversation about nature and mothers having, you know,
Connection to
fondness for
their
their
kid.
for their youth, and is that not
It
even
can be
addressed?
overcome with lies, and this is for purposes of breeding. So clearly your purposes are not for the state.
Probably.
Oh, I see. So the family unit then is
Subservient
in
to-
opposition or subservient to the state.
I think only in the guardians.
Yeah.
Right. This is our
Oh.
concern. I don't think that this extends to husbandry or cobblers or that sort of thing. I think you can have families down there, but it's the guardians that we bring together, and it's the best of the best, and you sort of become this one big family.
Interesting.
That's my impression, is that we're only talking about guardians.
Okay.
So us poor, ugly carpenters can fall in love.
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay. Good. Problem solved.
Well, you don't have
So
to
now
be-
you feel
you don't
okay
have to
about
be
this.
I
ugly.
feel fine.
Okay. Good.
Like I used ugly as
I see.
the example, but it's not just like we'll only breed the pretty ones. We'll breed the ones that are valorous and
the smart ones for the.
ruddy and intelligent and good at their jobs, and they're doing all the good stuff. And the people who are, just sort of failing at stuff and not doing great, and we just breed them a little less,
gotcha.
right?
No,
Or
we
at
can-
least not with each other.
gotcha.
Yeah. Okay. Then he gets into weird specifics, like how old should they be when they are of breeding age? Do you guys have any guesses for this?
I don't really want to guess.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Weird. He actually gives a prescription for women. It's ages 20 to 40. Now, why 20? 20 seems bizarre, and it's probably because he anticipates them having a full education. Right? So
Yep.
it could possibly start earlier, but starting at 20 allows them to fully get themselves together before they have to start breeding children.
Yep.
And then for a man, it's between 25 and 55. So a little longer extension.
Sure.
And then anyone above or below has done an unholy and unrighteous thing, and any children made from it are not sanctioned and are sort of quietly put away. And that's the same.
They're not stamped AAA. Like,
They're not stamped AAA, and it's the same true of any deformed children that come out of the natural breeding process with the guardians. They are
sad.
quietly put away to perish.
Wow.
Like he doesn't say that in so many words here. I just know that was a practice back in Greece, and he just says they will be sort of like removed. He uses really euphemistic language. Yeah.
Bummer. I still do not like the system at all.
How come?
What? I feel like, but there's no point along this where we will think, oh, this is a good idea, right? It can.
it's the same. I mean, it's the same criticism of Brave New World
Yes,
and any
exactly.
sort of
Yeah.
highly centralized control. Like at some point, we are now going against the grain of human nature,
Right.
and this is no longer like the collective whole, but at the expense of
Humanity.
individual freedoms and our human nature, and the Aristotle. Actually, I can't remember if he says it, but at least theologically speaking, the foundational building block of society is the family, and in this
It's the
the polis,
Yeah.
it's the city, and the family is subservient to it, whereas the city is subservient to the family in sort of, I guess, the Orthodox Christian understanding of government.
yeah.
Well,
Anyway.
the problem is your understanding of family.
Yes.
I'm just going to tell you how you're stupid.
Yeah, thank
Are you
you.
prepared for this?
I would love that.
Your
Thank you.
understanding of
Always.
Yeah.
of family is just a little too small, because if you think about it, after a few generations, all of the guardians would be brothers and sisters. And
Gross.
and their kids would be all sons and daughters. and their kids would be all grandchildren. And so really it would be like one big gigantic family.
Gross.
All of my fellow warriors would be my brothers and sisters and fathers and sons. And that's
So this is like the 19th century aristocracy in Europe.
a little bit.
Yes.
Yeah, they all sort of intermarried and then...
But we also need to prevent fathers and daughters from getting together, and mothers and sons, and sons, like you aren't supposed to marry your father or your granddad or any sort of weirdness there. We have to prevent inbreeding. How do we solve that problem when everyone is held in common? How do you know who your dad is? You don't know.
Oh, that's weird.
Secret files. You got someone knows.
Weirdly, it's just time. Like when we have these festivals, we just kind of keep track of who's born in what month, and so you don't like hang out with anybody that could have been your father. Like that's how you know, is there's like a little range there of like a birth range, and if you are outside of the range, you can't hang out with that particular person. Right? That's how we solve it. So other than that, it's probably okay, and it says brothers and sisters are okay if they have the good of the go ahead of the oracle. But I think in this case, brothers and sisters are any babies born sort of at the same time period. It starts to get real squiffy because everyone's family, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
weird.
So you guys seem to really dislike this.
Yeah, sure.
Do you see any positives coming from this?
So the point of it is to get the best of the best. And so if, in fact, intelligence and physical strength and whatever is passed on to your progeny, then you would, in fact, get the best, right?
Yeah, you would probably get the best.
Right. I mean, that's the main benefit of it, I think.
Okay.
There's some aspect of like control that maybe is good, of like if only your best are reproducing, then whatever like bad element is like erased from your city. That might be something that they're looking for.
Childbearing gets a lot easier if you just hand your baby
people.
over to wet nurses to be taken care of. So you can have a lot more kids.
Yeah. The guardians are freed up to guard, like they're freed up to do their role, and as opposed to raising their children. Yeah, sure.
Can you conceive of?
Ha!
We're talking about babies.
Oh my word! Oh my gosh! Can you
Say it again.
fathom?
Nope.
An
I
instance.
couldn't
Can you conceive
though.
of an instance
Are we swimming?
where?
Thank you.
Oh my word! So imagine that the Senate, 100 people, was all brothers and sisters and fathers and mothers. Do you think that would have any effect on the way that the Senate functioned?
Oh, yeah. Have you ever been like Thanksgiving dinner?
Yeah, way worse. What are you talking? That'd be
You think it'd be worse?
Yeah, way worse. Oh my gosh. Brothers and
Family
sisters fighting?
squabbles.
Yeah, totally.
This one seems to say it's going to be great for the state because
Yeah.
any rival of mine, right? In other states, we have people that are becoming
We have
enemies. And we're
family
trying
dynasties.
to
Yeah.
step on each other's heads, and you're trying to screw over the other families, and like there's just a lot of competition, right?
Right.
And you would speak to them as not being your friend, right? Like this guy is despicable and terrible. Whereas if everyone is family and one is potentially your brother and sister, and you would refer to the elders as fathers and mothers and grandfathers and grandmothers, might it change the way that you refer to them, right?
I
Sure.
mean, I guess I see his point.
Right,
But-
so his goal here is to bring unity of purpose, right? And when one person is hurt, like if we've got a hurt brother, that's a hurt brother, right?
Yep.
And so we make an effort to make that better.
But if everybody's your brother, you're going to lose the actual exclusivity that makes brothers
Special.
special,
Yeah.
right? Like, this your fellow Austinite. It's like, okay.
I think you're detecting kind of a problem here, right? I think for this to work, the polis has to be kept fairly small. Once you start hitting like 30 brothers, it's not really brotherhood anymore.
Yeah, I mean, look at Joseph.
Yeah.
He got thrown in a pit. He
Yeah,
sold,
by his brothers,
He got
right.
sold.
Yeah, he also wore way too flashy of clothing.
His dad gave it to him.
Hey,
Come on,
man.
Yeah, he didn't have to flaunt it though.
Haters going to hate.
That's exactly right.
Hey, that's true. Haters gonna hate.
Haters
That's
indeed.
that is, I think, the lesson of that book.
Thank you. Yes.
So, I mean, that's the goal. The goal is to bring unity of purpose, right? So if our children are in trouble, it's all of our children. If our elders are in trouble, it's all of our elders. And when we have a dispute, say, me against you, Donaldson, these are things that can be dealt with quickly, and then we would go to one of our fathers, and our father could
yeah.
speak to our dispute.
I think he's too quickly eliminating, or he's too quickly flagging competition as a net negative.
Sure.
Okay. Yeah, well, that makes sense. Yeah. Can you speak more to it?
I think that you can, that competition can breed, they can have
Right.
can be a net positive. even the competition between men in order to have a woman favor him can bring out the best in the man, right? But if it's just like who rolls what dice, at some point, like, you know,
if you've been getting snake eyes every year, like, what's the point of trying?
If they're sort of flirting with each other and they're making eyes at this festival and then they roll the dice, like, what? Maybe they go and have a secret love affair. I don't know. It's just at some point, like, what's that? Now I'm going to on Gibbs's new podcast, The Proverbial, like, you can drive nature away with a pitchfork, but she keeps coming back.
Yep.
Right? Like, there's something about that here. Like, this is at the point now where we're driving nature out with a pitchfork.
I feel like trying to drive nature out with a pitchfork, it's not that she comes back, she's just been behind you the whole time, and she's all around you. Right? You can try to drive her away, but you find yourself back at the same spot.
So this now, I think, is not taking into account human nature and the sort of the necessity of the marriage relationship, of that commitment that you make that you don't get out of, and then the positives that brings into the family. If Socrates isn't paying enough attention to what is going to be lost by removing strong family ties. He just assumes that strong family ties are a net negative because he sees, within a family they love each other, so let's just make everybody family. And it doesn't work that way.
Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah, okay. Yeah.
It's like Thomas takes care of his backyard. Great. If we just make the park everybody's park, everyone will take care of it the way that Thomas takes care of his backyard.
Nope.
And then we have like the tragedy of the commons, right? No one's going to take care of that park. Right. So then it could quite possibly be, instead of
if the kids are everybody's, nobody cares about those.
Nobody
kids.
cares about those kids. Yeah, and so then you have sort of like father. Or if everybody's your dad and everybody's your mom, then you don't really have a
dad.
mentor. You don't have a father. You don't have someone to aspire to be like, or to aspire to not be like if they were a bad influence. You just sort of are existing.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I find trouble with that too. When you sort of base a large diffused responsibility on the same responsibilities that come with an individual relationship, it just doesn't work.
Mm-hmm. The concentration is part of the thing.
Yeah.
If you do, like, it's a good word, diffusing it. If you diffuse it, you're not going to just have everybody have less responsibility. So, you don't have to take care of a crying kid because it's going to be given off to a wet nurse. It solves the problem of her being able to work more, the mom or whatever, but it doesn't necessarily have. You're not taking into consideration that there are negatives to this.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah.
Is there any kind of response that Socrates' ideas are crazy or will never happen? Or do they just kind of follow along?
They're like, yes, that is clearly beneficial, right?
They just roll with it.
They just sort of roll with it. Yeah. And if you guys like that last part,
you're going to
love this next part.
Okay.
Oh, by the way, he also says this sort of notion also shows, there was a question a couple podcasts ago where we were wondering if the Guardians were going to have a terrible life, right? Because they can't have any property, they can't have anything, they can't have a house. Are they just going to hate life if they don't have money or anything? And he says, nah, it's like they've got all these ladies, they don't have to take care of their kids, they're taken care of by the state, they don't have a lot of worries, right? All kinds of difficulties are sort of taken care of this, right? They are, for example, as the flattery of the rich by the poor. That doesn't happen because nobody's rich. The pains and pangs of which men experience in bringing up a family. That doesn't happen. Finding money to buy necessaries for their household. Nope. Borrowing and then repudiating. Nope. Getting how they can and giving the money into the hands of women and slaves to keep. Nope. The many evils of so many kinds which people suffer in this way are mean enough and obvious enough and not worth speaking of. So basically, their life is going to be great because a lot of those small things that you kind of have to take care of and you spend your life worrying about are sort of taken care of. Mm-hmm. They can focus on more of the state-run things, which I can kind of see, right? If ain't nobody rich, we're not worried about poor and rich. But you also, I think in that way, lose the motivation that money might bring to a man, right? Mm-hmm. So anyway, the next part that I said you were going to love, he talks about how will it be beneficial to, as far as war is concerned. And he's like, well, it's easy to see how they're going to carry out war. If you say you're a potter, right?
Okay.
You got a kid.
Okay.
And you want to bring him up as a potter. You're going to let him watch you make pots.
Right.
If you got a kid and you want him to be a warrior, you're going to let him watch war.
Okay.
And so they're going to take their kids to the battles.
Okay.
right? So always the
Sure.
kids come, but there's a little bit of give and take. You won't take them to the super dangerous expeditions, but the one you think you're going to win, it's pretty safe. You're going to take your kiddos and you're going to mount them on horseback, and that way, if we get into a bad situation, the kids can bail and everybody else can die, and we'll keep the kids. I mean, there's always the risk that we'll lose the whole crop, but at least the kids will have a vision of war before they have to get into war. You guys are just agreeing with this?
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense.
You guys seem you're totally not okay with
taking
there being no family unit,
but like taking children to battle day.
Yeah, like
Take your kid to work.
Yeah, take your kid to work day. Yeah, I don't know if you're like fighting for noble causes and stuff. Like you get to see mom and dad do their thing.
You guys have no conception that there might be some post-traumatic stress
Related to what? What are you talking about?
from watching people get dismembered on a battlefield
Wait,
or
what?
watching
Really?
your potential fathers and mothers be killed.
Gotta deal with
Nothing. No problems with these?
If it's done, who knows if it's really your dad?
Oh my god! I guess that is true in this city. Yeah, it's a good point.
Yeah. Are you guys being facetious, or are you really thinking this is probably
this
okay?
This is not as shocking to me as the last stuff.
You guys are insane. This is bonkers.
Okay, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. It's different.
How old are we talking? Like they can ride a horse.
No, it says we'll get the swiftest and most tractable. So horses that are totally chill with everything, but also run really fast.
So how does a kid need to be able to ride the horse?
Yeah, teach them when they're young.
Like 10?
No, you can start a kid younger than that riding a horse.
Really? I don't know.
7, and even so, 10. You're okay with a 10-year-old seeing people dismembered on a
I
battlefield?
mean, no, but in
screams of war.
in our crazy city, they need to be toughened up from a super young age. Like you need them desensitized to all that. I don't know. Like
We figure out if they were going to be good guardians or not.
yeah, by seeing how they react when they're little.
Oh man. All right.
Okay, there you go.
Okay,
You
You
guys.
want weak
that's-
kids? You want Vikings? What do you want?
Fair enough. If you can reach us at classicalstuff at veritasacademy.net. Okay. And then he talks about the reward. Like, what if they do a really good job? What honor should they get? And he says, well, first,
The Guardians?
yeah,
They get-
everyone should crown him
a
in
reroll.
succession.
Thank you.
A reroll at the next festival?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Snake eyes. Rolling it again. So
Saving.
what are
saving
some
roll.
ideas of things you might give the like really most valorous dudes?
Nothing. They already have gold in their blood, right?
Yeah.
What would they want?
A song about them.
Oh, there you go. Honor.
Okay, so honor. In the first place, he shall receive honor in the army from his
Hey.
youthful comrades. Every one of them in succession shall crown him. What do you say?
Awesome. Big bag of salt.
The guy says, I approve.
Okay, good.
And what do you say to his receiving the right hand of fellowship? What do you guys... Is that
How
okay?
else could it be otherwise?
To that, too. I agree.
Okay, good.
But I'm sorry, I'm quoting here if you
Yeah.
hadn't caught on, audience.
Sure.
But you will hardly agree to my next proposal.
What is it?
Oh, what is your next proposal?
What?
That he should kiss and be kissed by them. He says, most certainly. And I should be disposed to go further and say, let no one whom he has a mind to kiss refuse to be kissed by him while the expedition lasts, so that if there be a lover in the army, whether his love be youth or maiden, he may be more eager to win the prize of valor. So if he's like, I got this girl, I've been wanting to kiss her so bad, I go stab a guy and then give me a kiss.
Yeah.
And she can't even say no.
Can't even say no, he's the best stabber.
There's that. And then you guys, and he says, capitalize said that the brave man is to have more wives than the others has already been determined. It's like, this is great.
Okay.
Brave man, he can kiss whoever he wants. And he says, there is another manner in which, according to Homer, brave youths should be honored. For he tells how Ajax, after he was distinguished himself in battle, was rewarded with long chines, which seems to be a compliment appropriate to a hero in the flower of his age.
Long chines?
Being not only a tribute of honor, but also a very strengthening thing. I had to Google this.
Like two chines?
2 chines. It's just like, just bling. It's just the nicest. No, it's not bling.
Oh.
It turns out, I looked it up and it's backbones,
Oh.
but backbones especially as it concerns meat. So it's like really nice, huge cuts
Interesting.
of meat.
They're like
Okay, cool.
the best barbecue
So you
dinner.
win. You get a crown, some dope handshakes.
You get a kiss
Hot
all the
You get a kiss.
ladies.
smooches, smooch anybody. As long as the expedition lasts. You're
Yeah,
marching.
yeah.
You want to smooch? You
No
can
one can
smooch.
go. They
can't say
They
no.
can't say
They
no.
can't say-
You can smooch anybody.
Yeah.
And also, meat.
Meat. Oh my goodness.
Doesn't that sound awesome?
Big old.
And then they're honored when they die and all that stuff. And then there's this, we're kind of running out of time, but that's okay. There's only a little bit left. He has this big discussion about how they should war against the Hellenes versus how they should war against the barbarians. And he said, so if we're fighting Hellenes, we shouldn't enslave them. We shouldn't torch their houses. Right. If we beat them, we should only take their like yearly crop and then leave everything alone, because we have an eye to eventually being at peace, right? And we are at danger of being overcome by the barbarian hordes, and they have a completely different ethos. So them, we can torch their houses. The Hellenes, let's call it a discord, right? A dispute rather than a war, and with the aim of future peace. It'd be kind of like if Alabama and Kentucky kind of went at it, right? They're not hoping to forever torch each other, right? The goal is eventual peace between the states.
Sure.
Right? So that's kind of what he says. We got to have a different view as to how we go to war with different people.
Makes sense.
And then he says, okay, so that's, can we get there? Can we get to this state? Do you guys think it's even possible to make a step towards this state? And
a step, maybe, but this is crazy.
Plato says, or Socrates says that we're not going to get it perfect. Right? I've been describing the absolute perfect state, just like someone can have an idea for perfect beauty, but never actually realize it on the canvas. So we're going to get as close as we can. And if we're going to move that way, how do we get there in the fewest moves as possible? What is like the one thing that can get us, or a few moves that can get us closer and closer to this state as quickly as possible? How do we do it? How do we get there? Is it even possible, right? Because we can't just start from like a dude.
Does he answer that question? Does he say what his
he does?
Next
he says I got one thing that is going to get us a long way there.
A long way there. I got nothing.
Bunch of like-minded people and go to an island, like start a colony.
Make the philosophers kings.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Sure.
This is, if you've ever heard of the philosopher king,
Sure.
This is the first mention we get of it in book 5. He says, until philosophers are kings, we're not going to get there. And then we have a really lengthy discussion about what's the difference between a philosopher and someone who just holds opinions, which
Interesting.
I find terribly interesting because he says they are different. Right. Knowing is different than opining about something.
Okay.
And I find this interesting because with my students, if I say, is this a table? Then I say, yes, that's a table. They say, that's just your opinion. And there's a difference between knowledge, this is a table, and opining that this is a table.
Yeah.
Right? So they kind of have difficulties differentiating between the two. I find that to be maybe an interesting thing for proving to a student that knowledge exists, but maybe not as of much interest to our listeners. So philosophers should be kings. That's the one biggest move that can get us closer to this state. And he hasn't necessarily said how this particular move is going to get us there, but he says, like, until we have people that realize true beauty and know true beauty thoroughly and can think through all these things and know the good, we just won't get there, right?
Okay.
Does that make sense to you guys?
Sure, it makes sense, and especially for we've opined on this before that, of course, it'd be a philosopher saying it should be a philosopher king
Naturally.
put into power. But there's also something good to that of you want people who know things to be in charge. Like,
Yeah, I would want a philosopher in charge.
Right, that seems
Sure.
wise. I wonder how that works then when the barbarian hordes approach, but I don't know.
Well, hopefully a philosopher would know what the good is to do in any good situation, right? And so if the good is to take immediate action, he's not going to sit and think.
Maybe this is helping to redefine. When I think philosopher, I think
dusty old curmudgeon in a library, right?
Who only cares about thoughts and ideas and thinking, right?
I think that's a scholar as opposed to a philosopher,
sure.
right? A philosopher knows what is right and what is good,
You want
and so
someone more like Marcus Aurelius.
There it is.
Like someone who
Yeah.
does have an inner life of contemplation,
Yeah.
but is still a man of action.
yes.
yeah. I mean, Marcus Aurelius as a leader would be a great leader, right? Was he a great leader? I don't know much about his life. Yeah. So that's the kind of thing we're looking for: is someone that actively pursues the inner life of good and then brings that into his populace and then moves when moving is appropriate and takes action and spreads justice. And that is the kind of thing we are hoping for.
Yeah, but then also pairing that with the virtues, then that what they're trying to create is a virtuous society.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, that's even interesting. I don't know where to take that, but that the goal of the state is not just to have the best army or to conquer the most land, but it's to have a harmonious state. That's just an interesting way to think about that. You almost need someone who is wise and virtuous to lead that society.
Yeah. Because if they're bloodthirsty and money hungry,
then they can't do it.
Yeah.
So it makes sense. All that makes sense. Is there any reaction as to how they would put into power a philosopher king? Or
He just sort of mentions it, and then they dive into that discussion about who is a philosopher. Well, can we consider like the random painter who loves all kinds of different paintings, and he says, but none of them is perfect. He doesn't really see the good. He sees little bits of good all over the place.
Yep.
How do we tell him he can't be the king?
Right.
And that's kind of the question that they end with. And I assume we're going to get more thoughts on different formations of government in the next few chapters.
Okay.
Because I think, remember he mentioned there were like 5 different types of vices that can assail a state. And so I think we're going to get good states versus bad states. And we're going to kind of delve into government a little more in the next couple of chapters. Cool. But this one was all about kids and ladies.
Yeah, thinking back to that, I mean, you do see throughout history that families or societies or the aristocrats or whatever you want to call it, those that are in a ruling class who do have lots to lose, do end up building pretty elaborate systems, social constructs of who is worthy to be married and who isn't, right? So so we are reacting negatively to it, but it's not as if, but there's surely there have been people who have some level agreed with Socrates saying, yes, making sure that my son who is going to be inheriting wealth and power has a comparable companion for his life is a really important thing, and his whims aren't going to play a part in this because there's too much at stake. I mean, you definitely see that. Maybe all 3 of us are just so common that this was never an aspect of our life. But I wonder if that even still exists in the lives of the wealthy in the West, or, I mean, I'm sure it happens still you got to think that like in Saudi Arabia, one of the prince's sons, like that there's going to be a huge, social constructs of who he's going to marry. He can't just sort of go marry whoever he wants. I'm not saying it's either good or I'm not saying it's a good thing. I'm just saying that like Socrates,
this is more common
Socrates is just formalizing something that does happen in those kinds of systems of power and wealth.
Sure, and even in that system of power, like what you want to establish in many areas is your family. You put your cousin in charge of the church. You put your nephew in charge of oil. You put, right, because they have familial ties and familial responsibilities to keep. So his notion is something that commonly happens in power. And if you're going to overthrow that regime, you got to out everybody.
It's true.
Yeah.
Right?
It's good to be commoners, so we can marry for love.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, and cobble to our heart's desire.
Yeah, there you go.
That's good.
Anyway, that's chapter 5. I hope you guys are still enjoying it. I found this chapter
it's good.
wildly interesting.
Bazonkers.
It's weird.
Super fun.
His ideas keep getting crazier and crazier. I love it.
If you have any questions, I'm sure you may have concerns, or anything, you can email us at classicalstuff@veritasacademy.net. If you would like to send hilarious quips our way through the power of the internet, you can tweet at us at classical stuff, CLSSCAL stuff on the twits. You can find our episodes, including all the old episodes that are disappearing, like Marty McFly in that photograph, that are disappearing from iTunes. You can find it at classicalstuff.net. And that's it. Thank you.
If you want to leave us a good review, you can leave us a 5-star review. If you want to leave us a bad review, check out Josh Gibbs' new podcast.
No.
And you can leave the bad review. I feel like we got to establish a little bit of a rivalry, right?
No.
Like, should we do that? We love Josh Gibbs, but it's like a friendly ribbing.
Yeah. Seriously,
man, if someone does that,
please don't. Please don't do that.
His new podcast is great. Listener, it's Proverbial is the name. I think Graham said it earlier, but you would enjoy that podcast very much. So
check it out. And Josh Gibbs, we love you if you're listening.
He's not listening.
He's not listening.
All right. And this is AJ, Thomas, and Graham signing off.
Bye.
Bye.